Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second panel, live panel discussion for the Re-Becoming the One free symposium, where we're focusing on the healing.
Everybody.
Oh, wow.
Welcome
Hang on.
to the
This happened before. This is
live panel discussion for the Re-Becoming the One.
Bizarre.
Re-Becoming the
Oh
One.
my goodness.
Free symposium.
Okay.
It's two of you who are going to become one.
YouTube is live streaming and playing it for me.
Keep your YouTube screen closed. You don't need it open to stream it.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. All right. All right. So we are here today in this panel to be discussing the divine masculine, and we just finished a really beautiful, sweet panel talking about the divine feminine. Hey, Matthew, yay.
Sorry, I had some difficulty getting in with the link.
Oh, no problem at all. We're all here, yay. So this is a really big panel, and before I start, I just want to say that, yeah, when I was organizing this symposium, I obviously wanted to speak to all gender expressions and the experience of the divine feminine, the divine masculine in all forms, no matter who you are, etc. I had the hardest time getting anyone to speak about the divine masculine at all, period. And in particular, people who identify as cisgender male were very hesitant to talk about the masculine. So, and now
maybe that's indicative of part of the collective
yes,
problem.
Exactly. But look at this panel, it's the biggest one. This is so awesome. So thank you all so much. It's, you're overcoming the fear or the something that our collective has, or that we all have, to talk about this. And I'm really, really grateful that you're all here. So at the beginning of this whole thing, Gemini actually has a little beautiful video that he's going to show just to kind of help us drop into silence and drop into ourselves. And maybe as it's playing, I would love each of you listening now and in the future, and then each of the panelists to drop into the question of what is the divine masculine for you? And when we come out of that moment of silence, I'll just go around the circle and call on each of you to give a brief answer for what that is. I know Cayelin has kind of a bigger, deeper thing that you want to say, so I'll probably come to you last, if that's all right. And I know, Matthew, you need to leave right at 12:30, and so we're going to probably go a little past 12:30, but it's totally fine for you to drop off at that time. Great. So Gemini, I'm going to make you host so you can share your beautiful video.
I promise I'll give it back.
Oh yeah, that's good.
For anyone who's watching live or in what I perceive to be the future, I'm going to just offer a strobe warning. Martha, it looks like you made Erik the host.
What?
Because this thing will start blinking quickly at some point. Yeah, so if that stimulates you in ways you do not wish to be stimulated, you can just close your eyes and listen to the music. And when the music's over, the blinking will be over as well. My friend Elijah made this with me some time ago to test this statement that I made during a talk really about this subject, which was that if we spin the taji, which you may know as the yin yang, that the black and the white, no matter how fast, will never just become gray. But what results is all of these amazing things. So without further ado, let me let it speak for itself.
Yeah.
Looks
Erik,
like I don't have permission yet. Erik, you're going to have to make me a host.
Oh yeah, there you go.
We'll pass. It's like passing the conch around.
Sorry, his name was right above yours, and I thought I was clicking.
Virtual conch.
If you go to panelists and you click on Gemini's name and you go to more, it will allow you to make him host.
And I'll say while we're waiting, I've been told that the effects that you will see, which are all these amazing geometries, are actually a result of like some computer ones and O's. But even that, I think, speaks to what we're after here. And maybe it's just the Aquarian age contribution to what this whole thing is about.
Beautiful. And also, while we're waiting, I'll say that your entire talk, Gemini's entire talk, is this beauty of these visuals. And your talk is about the sacred geometry with regard to gender, and it's like it's an experience. It's just watch it. It's so beautiful. You definitely get the prize for the most and unbelievably beautiful images hands down. Out of all 42 talks. Yeah.
Work at it.
I know.
Erik, are you able to find me in your panelists?
No. Okay. Can you make me host again?
No, it would be in the same place.
Okay.
Hello, friends. This is a behind the scenes look at the complications of our day and age, where we have this genius ability to connect as single nodes in the World Wide Web, but it doesn't come without technical.
I just want to say, Erik, if you click on the participants at the bottom of the screen, when they pop up, you'll see panelists on one side and it says 10, and you'll see attendees on the other side, it says 15. And if you click on the panelists, then you should be able to find Gemini Brett and click and make him pass the host thing off to him.
Yeah. And very last resort, you could sign out and sign back in. And it should
pop it back to you.
But in the meantime, maybe
Success.
Oh, you got it? Oh, yes.
Well played. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Erik. So yeah, while this is playing, we're just gonna all drop into the question of what is the divine masculine? Awesome. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Gemini.
My pleasure. I keep trying to like make screenshots of different geometries, but then the screenshot just looks like the Taji. Right.
Well,
so I've just stared at that so many times, trying to look at those different 3s and 6s and 4s and 2s that come through.
I love it. So just to kind of anchor how I want to approach this whole time together, I want to say what I said at the beginning of the Divine Feminine panel, which is that you're all here because in some form or another, you could be considered an expert on the Divine Masculine. I mean, even if you don't consider yourself that, I mean, you're here because of that. But, and where I would really love to be coming from with all of what we speak to today is from not only our minds and maybe the expertise that we have, but really our heart and our soul and our bodies and who we are as spirit, who we are as beings of this planet, being of the earth, being of the cosmos, being of infinity and beyond that, beings of the divine, whatever your word is for all of it. And so from that place, yeah, I would love to hear, brief answer just to get us started. What is the Divine Masculine? So if it's okay, I'm just going to go around what I see as a circle here on my screen. Does that work for everyone? I would love to start with Joe.
Well, hello. I was fearing that was going to happen.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Well, we can rearrange.
Yeah,
Each
we can
person can rearrange. So I don't know what I don't know if any of us know what you're seeing as the order, though.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. I've been called that. I will do it. So I guess if I were to put it in one sentence, I think I would say divine masculine is that which initiates. Do I pass it off to somebody, or
Yeah, you can feel free to call on someone, or I can call on someone.
I'll go with Erik.
Yeah, that's a question. I don't think it could be summed up in one statement. Although Joe, you did pretty good there. So it could certainly, in contrast to the divine feminine, is part of like the duality in which we live in. What we're also striving to go even evolve beyond, but not to leave it behind as part of ourselves. Yeah, on a basic level, it's kind of an active force, but I also feel the feminine also is an active force too. So I can't really give a clear, like, real basic statement. It definitely goes really, really deeper than that. It's just something that I've been exploring myself throughout my life and still evolving that in myself about what is who we are, what role the masculine plays in our own lives, our relationship to our fathers, our brothers, the inner masculine within. It's I feel it's been scattered and distorted and dislodged, if you will, but also perhaps an awakening is happening here within that we can all eventually connect into within ourselves to find that greater harmony. I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, Martha, but I don't have a full, like, basic statement there.
That's exactly the answer I'm looking for, because it was your answer. That's awesome. Thank you. Would you like to call on someone?
I'll give it to you to call on someone.
Okay, how about Baba?
Aloha. If you don't mind, just for a sharing sake as a group, can we just take just a few minutes of silence, taking a deep breath, and then blowing out 2 or 3 times, and then I'll give an answer. I like to, for me, it's a sense of evoking. That's part of being, I would assume, a space of honoring the divine masculine. So if we can, let's all take a deep breath in and release. Again, breathing it in and release. One more, breathing in. And as we release, it's giving thanks to Source for this blessed opportunity, moment, recognition, not allowing our words, but allowing thy words to be shared in the space of just knowing, being able to honor and to set the altars within our own hearts, being able to light our own candles within ourselves, and the crystals, all of those things are within inside. So giving thanks for this moment of recognition of love, guidance, and protection. So it is, so it shall be. Ashe. I would say for me, the divine masculine is being able to honor the divine feminine within myself, which makes it a joy to being able to honor the divine feminine with outside of me. So it's finding the balance within myself and understanding that, you know, society itself has created a condition that the divine masculine and the divine feminine within inside of the masculine, I feel, has been disciplined to shut down, but yet it's still available to us at all times. So being able to honor the divine feminine within me creates a balance for me to being able to show up in a divine masculine way.
Love it. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Kyle.
Hello. Oh, sure, that sounds okay. Yeah. Honestly, I have a bit of a hard time sometimes defining like the divine masculine, in part because to call it something sort of necessitates that it excludes that thing from the divine feminine.
Mhm.
So that gets it gets tricky for me, and I guess I end up ultimately thinking about it a lot in the context of where it is now, its role maybe in society. And I think Joji made a good point about the initiatory sort of role that it plays, and maybe to ride on that a little bit, I would say responsibility. It's maybe how I see it, the sort of responsibility that comes with what you initiate. Because when you initiate something, when you start something, it has consequences attached to it. So being careful about, what the consequences of what you initiate are, I guess is maybe the root of what it means to me. And
Yes.
yeah, like what Erik was saying, it's very complicated. So it's I'll maybe leave it with that. Pass the mic.
Absolutely. Gemini?
Well, I'm just shown to share what I'm looking at and maybe a tail, but outside my window is this Aries half moon. And I know she's in between, very close to Jupiter and the ray of Mercury, but between Jupiter and Mars in the sign of tropical Aries right now. And the way that I'm seeing this half moon, it's like this curved bow pointing up towards the heavens in a flat line down, pointing to the ground, and specifically to Mount Tamalpais, which is out my window here. It's like grandfather, old sacred mountain. So a couple of things in that. One is that the masculine is what is measurable and the need to measure. And it's odd that the only celestial object that will ever show us a straight line is the moon. And, it feels not moon. It feels like this strange thing, that edge, that blade, and this time that speaks of that nature of the square, and the stress in that specific engagement or relationship, and reminds me of like curves in the sky and trines and talents, which are so beautiful, especially when they are given sacred space and honored and allowed to come forth, but also skills, which unlike talents are that which are forged in the flames, typically as a necessity to survive. And they both have their merits. And I think there's something in that too. That which is born of stress might be an image of the masculine in some respects. So Mount Tamalpais, from what I'm told, has long been known as like a grandfather of this region. And to look at that peak that just stands strong and kind of calls attention to it, but not in this way, that's look at me, but I am you. There's something in that. And then I'll share a tale about this thing. So yesterday I went out scooter with Koa and we were having a lot of fun. We did 12 laps around the cul-de-sac over here, and one for each of the signs, because I'm consistently talking to him about the order of the 12 signs of the zodiac and finding fun ways to do this. And in Libra, I wrecked pretty bad and got tossed into the neighbor's trash cans. But we decided to finish the 12. I'm kind of wishing I hadn't, because when we came back, we actually both fell in the driveway. And Koa was really like screaming, crying, and that's the divine masculine. And I was bleeding and in a sense trying not to. And I'm not sure if that's the divine masculine, but the reason is I needed to put his pain in front of mine and to make sure he was okay. And when that was known, then we both came inside. And so offering my strength, but then offering my weakness, allowing myself to be held by my beloved here and bandaged and all that. And Koa, who was much better off than I was, it was interesting. He was just witnessing me because I was in a lot of pain and like grunting with every exhale. And he asked me, he's like, "Are you making it worse?" I was like, "I don't know, man." I showed him my hands. They're just like bloody. And I mean, I was wondering if that was a thing, you know, that where that question came from, if that was something that he had been taught, or if I was like, you know. And I said, no, I think I'm making it better. And actually, I don't think I'm making it anything. I think it's just what it is. And I'm sharing authentically my experience. And I think if we can set this thing straight, that's the divine masculine.
Beautiful. Love it. Matthew.
I'm just really soaking in what everyone has said. And to me, the divine masculine embodies elements of everything that's been said so far. And I think, Martha, you really spearheaded with a point that I too was going to start with, that being able to operate not just from the mind, but from the heart, the wisdom of the heart and the soul. The mind is a product of the ego, and the ego serves a function in helping us to synthesize and organize material in our day-to-day lives. And I think that serves a function in the 3D world in which our souls reside. But being able to maintain our through line with the universe, with the divine, with something greater than ourselves, however we may define that, and that's for each individual, of course, to define, but something greater than ourselves, to be able to embody, respond, choose, initiate, direct, set intentions, and express from a place of divine love and compassion. And with that, being able to embody facets of the yin and the yang, to be able to hold love and compassion for that which is opposite, or which we perceive to be opposite of ourselves. Can we do that even while being clear about who we are and where we stand and what our truth is, expressing that with compassion rather than something that is overpowering or oppressive or diminishing of the other? Can we find strength in vulnerability? Can we allow ourselves to be held and tended to? Can we seek out another who can provide nurturing and tenderness? And can we allow ourselves also to, with fluidity, to be nurturer of the other? Can we speak our truth without diminishing the truth of another? Can we embody with fluidity? Baba, I think you spoke to this so beautifully. Can we embody and express what we perceive to be divine feminine, and allow a back and forth, a give and a take, and a flexibility around that, because we're comfortable enough in who we are through our identity, whether that is our authentic gender identity that we've taken on over the course of our lifetimes, or whether it's through the physical body into which we were born, however we want to, however it's authentic for us to establish our own gender identity. Can we be comfortable embodying all facets of gender across a continuum? But at the end of the day, I think it really comes back to love and compassion in whatever physical body, through whatever gender identity we may assume. Can we be in a place of love? Can we give as we receive? Can we receive as we give? And can we remain aligned with something greater than ourselves, that's filled with light? So that's some of what I think about with regards to the divine masculine. And I think that my my cohort here, each of you who've spoken before me, I think you've all touched upon some really salient points as well.
Love it. Thank you. Cameron?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's good. All right, cool. So the first thing when it comes to divine masculine, the first thing I automatically think about is, well, what is divine? You know? And so like first we have to like shift into that orientation of what is divine, because that would be the context of the content of even talking about divine masculine. So when we're talking about divine, it's something that's like godlike. So automatically for myself, I kind of drop in and just surrender or let go. Because if it's godlike, it's not necessarily saying that it's not in me, but I look to something that's bigger than me that flows through me. Right. So I start there. And then to say divine masculine, automatically it's a consort to the feminine. And so what the divine masculine is in relationship to the divine feminine. That's what it is. But it is divine, you know, and so I like just start tracking it down from there. And so the expression of the divine masculine, I would say, personally for myself, the way I would perceive it or try to embody it the best way I know how, is just like I'm trying to understand what are the godlike qualities that are in me that allow me to penetrate into anything energetically to give clarity. And so I kind of like could go on like a tangent, but I'm feeling like I'm already starting to like think. And so I'm just going to stop there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Ari.
Hey everyone, I love that, Cameron. What arises for me is congruency. I think about just who we are and what's true, and that truth isn't conflicted. Love isn't conflicted. The source of all things and who we truly are in our essence, it is already what it is. And for me, thinking about that, reflecting on that truth becomes an invitation to look at my own choices, my own perceptions, and where things feel complicated, where things feel confusing. Earlier today, a friend of mine at this farm we're staying offered me an edible. And I thought, that might be fun. Haven't done that in a while. And what I came to was, well, what's my intention? What's my purpose? Why? And I decided for right now, until I could, have a sense of dosage and effect and intention, to abstain. And the abstinence wasn't some sort of moralistic, rigid, repressive no. It was more of a honest self-reflection that constellated around why, what's my purpose. And I think about how common it is, almost how celebrated it is in our society, in the world, to just do things, eat things, say things without really knowing why. I can think of the number of times that I've conditioned myself to, let's say, open up the refrigerator and look for something without really knowing what I'm looking for, without really knowing what it is I'm going for. And we just think about how often do we bring a quality of presence into relationship, either with other people, with our body, with any facet of life, without a sense of purpose. And where do we perhaps believe that we can't have that we can't live with clarity, that we don't have that capacity for greater self-agency and greater self-trust to know what I'm doing. And I think there's this beautiful relationship here between reality and the path that we cannot control, that which is completely beyond our capacity to control, and yet that which we can control, which is our stance right now. So if we understand that, the masculine and the feminine, the way that I think about it, they're not like equal halves. They're not actual polarities. They exist in relation to one another. And it's been spoken here that the masculine is in service to the feminine. And the way that I think of this is that which is whole, sacred, divine, the womb of life itself, right? It's like we're doing things. As per Mars, right? Just the energy of the masculine force is moving outward. If you're making a choice, you're opening up a path, a road, moving in a certain direction that's going to have consequences. Every action has a consequence. And to really understand that we're in relationship to life itself, to our hearts, to one another, to this precious opportunity here to awaken, to evolve, to grow, to learn, to remember. It really brings this gravity of self-reflection and self-awareness. Okay, maybe when I was younger, there was a little more leeway to not know myself, to not think so consciously about my choices and what the effects of that might be. I can eat things and say things and do things, and well, my parents will take care of that. Or maybe as a young adult, consequences aren't so strong. But as we mature, if we're lucky, there's a quality of our path narrowing in where it feels like there's less wiggle room. Right? Like if I eat sugar, I will feel that. And what that's done for me is it's brought greater reflection and thoughtfulness. How can I best care for my body? And what is it like to eat when I'm hungry? What is it like to really understand how I can be in service to life, to this container, to this vessel that I'm working with? And so that sense of like as if there's like a rope around us, and the space between truth and where we are, if we're lucky, but it can be very stressful. And I agree with that sentiment that there's something that grows in that stress, that rope gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And that can feel incredibly frustrating. Relative to the pure Mars impulse, that experience can feel incredibly frustrating because when it's not matured, when it's not directed in a way of self-knowledge and self-agency, it can feel like our freedom is being limited. But we have to really ask ourselves and get to know as we mature, what's our freedom for? Like, what is the purpose of freedom? Is it to just be unchecked? Or is it to really cultivate greater mastery in our capacity to thoughtfully make choices and to know why we're making those choices? And I think that's the maturation that I see happening for all of us on our soul journey. Of course, male, female, everything, everyone in between. There's no gender construct in this learning. What am I doing right now? What's my purpose? What's my intention? One of my favorite teachings in A Course in Miracle goes something like, for everything that you do, you should be able to answer the question, what is it for? Just to reflect on that. How often do we do things and we don't know why? This will create consequence that later on we'll have to come back to the choices we've made and then decide where we are right now. Everything in life that is ambiguous, every time we are present in a stance of ambiguity, life is going to reflect that back to us so we can ultimately learn and come to claim our profound capacity for clarity and choice. So those are my reflections when I think about what the divine masculine is, and as a cultivation, as a practice.
Yeah, and you and I have had personal conversations about like, all of that. Very helpful. And it seems really similar to what Kyle was reflecting too. Really beautiful. Helping me hone my own inner masculine. And I want to hear from Cayelin, and then there is an awesome question in the chat from, it says Erica, but I happen to know who these people are. So I think it's Jessica and Rebecca and Melissa over there asking this question. So I'm going to come to that in a little while. But Cayelin, go for it.
Oh my goodness. I'm loving what everyone has said, and especially because you are all representatives of the divine masculine. And I think I'm going to get emotional because this has been a very challenging place in my own personal life, having started out with my father didn't want a child, especially a girl child. And so I have had a lot of wounding that I've worked out throughout my whole life. And I've had to do a lot of forgiveness work for myself, for my father, for, all the things that I had to experience. And I am blessed with 3 sons who are amazing. So I know that helped me to see that I was making progress with that work. And in the shamanic astrology paradigm that I come from is we talk about, for women, it's about how do you come from your own divine masculine expression. So you're not projecting it out onto someone to be that for you. And of course, that's what I did early on. And when I came to this understanding, it was like I started to own it. And I feel like I did a lot of projection with my first 2 husbands. And then when I got to the marriage I'm in now, which is going to be 16 years in October, I finally met somebody who is a representative of my inner masculine in an external relationship. And so I call him my BHE, best husband ever, because he is my 3rd husband, so I can say that. And a few weeks ago, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he sent me something that I want to share that I feel like really speaks to things that everyone has spoken to here and how around the divine masculine. This was a post, I posted it on my Facebook page and talked a little bit about how I get to live this now. And it went viral. So I hope this is something that will be inspirational to everyone here, and how I feel like the men here are really representing that, and that there are more and more, and I see it more and more in the world, and less of the more toxic, distorted masculine energy. So this is from Moshe Devi, and it's called The Man Who Walks with the Healer. When a man chooses a woman who follows her calling, his only chance to maintain the connection is in following her, and above all, in creating space for her to follow her path. It may happen that he needs to abandon his own neediness, or that he finds a means of healing through their common path. When a man chooses a woman who heals the collective wounds of woman or of women by following her calling, his yes for her equals a yes to a bigger purpose, far beyond building a house or raising children. Their connection goes beyond fulfilling the classical gender role models. For this man accepts the job of having the back of this woman, of catching her when she cannot transform the pain of the world anymore. It means for him to welcome a different form of sexuality, since healing on the level of sexuality is one of the most profound issues of the woman who needs to become a healer. For him, this is about welcoming slowness, softness, and healing, about redirecting his own drive, about being present for the whole. Because when a man chooses a woman who aims for freedom, they can only achieve this together. And by him leaving his narcissistic aspects behind and recognizing the path of the woman he loves and supports is his own path towards freedom. When a man chooses a woman who is bigger, he cannot dwell in the places of energies of oppression or of playing small. He, if he chooses to take on this mission with her, accepts a task serving the well-being of all men, even though it happens in the background. Within this background, he creates space of security, of keeping her safe from an ambush bred by his own old wounds, driving her into submission. When a man chooses a woman out of his fascination with her radiance and wisdom, it must be obvious to him that he cannot be stuck within his own deficits in a way that makes him want to diminish her radiance, purely out of fear of having to share her with others. When a man chooses a woman who follows her calling, he cannot fear these words: respect, humility, and surrender. He will rather walk the path of divinity alongside his woman, the healer, with gratitude and overflowing heart. For such a woman will choose, if she ever needs to choose, in favor of the well-being of all women, and she will choose walking her path alone instead of leaving that path for him. Nevertheless, she is aware of this power that lies in the presence of a man who is beating the drums for her. And so I feel like I now have this in my external reality, and I also have it in my internal reality, and that my internal and external sacred masculine are beating the drums of loving support for me.
Beautiful. Definitely hitting me hard. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's a perfect, beautiful segue to this question that's being asked in the chat, which I'll read out loud. I have another question that I want to ask. I want to make sure we have time for, hopefully. So I'm going to read the question in the chat, and maybe a couple of you could answer, and then I'd love to ask another question, again, if we have time. But so the question is, thank you for this panel discussion. A question that has been brought up in our household relating to this topic is, can you clarify what you feel the benefit or reason is behind dividing parts of ourselves into divine feminine and divine masculine versus thinking of ourselves as divine people? And this is something I have thought about a lot in the last 3 months, because I'll just say two things. One is I have been speaking to people of, incredibly wide range of perspectives on this exact question. One end, like people who feel really strongly we need to just abolish gender, and then on the other end, people who feel really strongly that their exploration of the binary has been really healing. And then I would say a lot of people feel kind of in between, or both. And I would say personally, I probably feel both. I feel I can relate to all of it. And then I also just want to say, one thing I love about this panel is that all genders are represented: cisgender, female, male, not, let's say, okay, oh my goodness, gender fluid. Basically, it's a huge variety of gender identities, and then also sexual orientations are represented here on this panel. So I think this is a really beautiful question to be asking to this group of people. And I would love to also have people share in the chat any of your own answers, because it's
What's the question? What's the question again? Can you repeat it?
Yeah, it is. Can you clarify what you would feel the benefit or reason is behind dividing parts of ourselves into divine feminine and divine masculine versus thinking of ourselves as divine people? I love the term divine people. Yeah.
Excuse me, my apologies.
And I see you, Matthew. I'll come to you after Baba.
Yeah, I would say eliminating duality within. I mean, society is just so comfortable with creating duality, and it has been masterful at doing that. And so, just really recognize, I would assume, just in my own personal space of just recognizing that I'm connected to all, that there is all, and I am that I am, and I get to honor that. And like as I shared a little earlier, being able to sit at my own altar, which creates a balance. And then I see that outside of me, whether if it's disdained or showing a sign of ugliness, I still get to see the divinity. I remember a question was asked to Michael Beckwith shared his story. He asked a gentleman who he said he was just so touched by his elder, how he always moved the life. And the elder said to him, he asked him, how is it that you're able to maintain this part of yourself, this calm, this beauty, this awareness? And his response was, I live in this world as only I and God exist. And I was really touched by that, because it again becomes a full reflection of how would you treat that outside of you if you are not treating it on the inside of yourself. So now that I get to have that knowing inside of me, I get to now respond to it. So in a way that's loving, nurturing, and caring for myself, and what's that other sharing is like source or God, or I guess I struggle with the word God, but there's a related word that most folks can relate to. Is all that you think that it is and all that you think that it's not. And so just recognizing in that moment that that's what you're constantly in contact with on an ongoing basis, 24/24, even in your sleep. So being able to honor that, and again, being humbled by it. That's just my sharing around it.
Thank you, Matthew. And I know Gemini and anyone, I should say, I'm not going to limit this to 2 or 3. If you really feel burning like you want to answer this question, I'm going to definitely give you space for it. So this feels very potent and alive for a lot of you. So Matthew.
Sure. I think it's a fascinating question. And truths that I've derived anyway from a lot of channeled text that I've read over the years, as well as some of my own psychic channeling work around that, The soul knows no gender. And some of my own studies over the last 25 or 30 years have talked about how in the very earliest form of kind of human soul-esque incarnation residence on the earth, which goes back to like the earliest days of Atlantis and Lemuria, for example, we actually did not have physical bodies. It was more like bodies of energy that were kind of hovering and hanging out around the earth and interacting energetically. And as souls began to become more attached to the earth over however many millions of years, we gradually, the soul became denser and denser and denser and started to develop a physical form. And I think that some of that is actually expressed through a number of mythological archetypes. For example, the archetype of Sagittarius, or the archetype of sort of the half man, half human, half horse, half dog, half human, and so on and so forth. I believe anywhere, have come to believe that some of those are all kind of representative of where the soul started to come into denser and denser form, eventually taking on the form of a human body. And with that came the birth of polarity. Well, first of all, in order to physically procreate, we do need biological polarity, at least in this world, in this universe, on this planet, for every species, except I think the seahorse. But that is not necessarily a universal truth on other planets and other galaxies and other life forms. So going back to the question, what's the point? We learn through polarity. We learn through a mirror image of ourselves. If we believe that we are embodying light, but we are judging or shaming something that's different than that, it's teaching us. If we're affiliated with one religion, another religion is teaching us something opposite. If we have an identity with one race, another race is teaching us something different. If we are associating with one particular gender and physical body, the other physical body is teaching us. If we identify with one end of a continuum of sexual orientation, the other is teaching us. So it's all about, I think in spiritual terms, in the larger spiritual evolutionary journey, it's all about mirroring polarities for the purpose of teaching, for the purpose of trying on different forms, for souls embodying, incarnating into bodies to experience a kaleidoscope of perspective. And I've come to believe that this whole notion of gender was actually just kind of a long-term experiment within the evolutionary journey here on Earth School. And eventually, I believe we're going to evolve out of it. And I think we've already seen signs of that, particularly over the last 50 to 60 years, as gender roles have become, in large scale, much less conventional than they were for hundreds or even thousands of years prior. As women returned to the workplace, as people started claiming their power, whether it was with regards to gender or race or sexual orientation, and so on and so forth, as we have this incredible wave of millennials and now Gen Zers who are identifying with gender fluidity. I believe that this is actually part of an evolutionary momentum that is helping return us perhaps to the wisdom of where we began. Keeping in mind that growth is not linear, it is not from getting from point A to point Z, but it's all circular, as with the earth, as with the universe, and the galaxy. So I think we, as souls, I believe we've chosen to incarnate in human form through a series of lifetimes and a kaleidoscope of experiences to learn about different perspectives, to embody different truths, to express different truths, but ultimately adding to a collective wisdom. And I think there are perhaps more evolved or differently evolved planets and solar systems where there may be human-like beings that don't necessarily have any physical or social gender, because it isn't needed. So that's some of what I've come to appreciate. And Cayelin, I also want to comment, I thought what you read was absolutely just beautiful. I would also love to embrace it in the absence of the use of a gender pronoun, because that would just, I think, adds so much beauty and richness and universal applicability to that story. So that's some of my truth.
Beautiful. And I'll just say, because I know you're going to have to get off in a few minutes, but I'll just, in terms of everybody, watch Matthew's talk on the divine masculine with regard to queer men. You're brilliant, and you need to write that book, and you're going to write that book, and it's so much there.
And hopefully a lot of that also applies regardless of sexual orientation,
or even gender identity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm actually good for about another 15, so I'm sticking around for a little while.
Yay. Perfect. Great. Gemini, Joe, and then Kyle.
So I have so many different ways to answer this question, because I have so many different ways to hear this question. I want to repeat it. Can you clarify what you feel the benefit or reason is behind dividing parts of ourselves into divine feminine and divine masculine versus thinking of ourselves as divine people? So to one way I hear that question, the answer is no, not at all. I mean, I'm not sure why we would do this as the feminine and the masculine, right? And so if you watch the talk that I offered for the symposium, it's like, how about curves and lines? How about immeasurable and measurable? And these are some of the ways that we've played with polarity in the mystery schools since the beginning. Speaking of mystery schools, that's one reason why contemplating this as feminine, masculine is purposeful, because you can access a lot of rich transmissions from the last centuries, millennia, like, some of the alchemical woodcuts, which are for some and not for others. I want to read again, why divine feminine and divine masculine versus thinking of ourselves as divine people? Well, should the question say as divine person, right? Because even if I say divine people, then I'm more than one, at least two. But to answer that question, why separate at all? So let me just read the beginning of the question. Can you clarify what you feel the benefit or reason is behind dividing parts of ourselves? That's a really good question. Why not just be the one? And I'll say that it's pretty much the same question as, what am I doing here on earth in a body incarnated? And my answer to that, though I can't really know, this is when I ask the moon in the midst of the night and I'm in that dreamy space. We come here for the opportunity to grow. That time and space is one of the gifts of a fixed place like this. And when I tune into one and oneness, it feels so beautiful, as much as I can even taste that. But at the same time, the one, because it is everything, in a sense, is nothing. It can't grow, it can't move. The only reason why the one grows is because of miracles like you, which is spirit reflected in a very unique way, which we'll never repeat it. Spirit reflected in a unique way through soul, and that must come into matter. And so, the question in some senses for me, it's like, hey, why duality? And I think a better answer, or the question that I'm actually hearing more, is why polarity? Because duality and polarity feel, in my experience, is very different words. Like duality feels a little bit more divisive. And I guess that's in the question, because why divide ourselves, right? So, but why polarity? Like, let's entertain that question. And because it makes the world go around, right? So why have these yin and yang signs or inner and outer signs in this craft we call astrology? And I've really rejected some of the older terms, which are the negative and positive signs, but I've learned to embrace them. Actually, from a question from a student in my school recently, where I was looking at, like Aries and Libra opposite. And I talked about positive and negative and shared this thing about, and I did in the talk I presented for the symposium, like, well, if you've ever wired a lamp, it's like negative is your friend, because the positive will shock your ass. And the negative it's your friend because it's grounded, like literally tied to a piece of earth, of metal, like planted in Earth's body to receive that, so-called negative charge of Earth's water. And that says so much when you learn to speak astrologically. And the question was, why would you have like positive and positive signs across from one another? Because that's how Aries and Libra, for example, would be described in this version of the tradition. And why not positive and negative so they attract? It's like, oh, the whole thing is just going to collapse like instantaneously. So this actually promotes growth. It doesn't have to be separation, it's expansion. And if you look next door, like there's something that you're attracted to and it makes the world spin. And so the way that I prefer to hear this question, because it's so in alignment with many questions I've been asking, especially this year, but these last few years too, is like, well, why polarity at all? And the answer is because it makes the world go around. And then the question is, why a world? And my answer is because we incarnate in a place with the appearance of time and space so we can grow, which happens through feeling, healing, and knowing. And our knowing is our growing, and our growing is the growth of the one which only grows because of miracles like you, spirit reflected through soul into matter.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Joe.
I just want to say I have to leave right now.
Oh, Baba, thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you for bringing us to the breath. It's nice to meet you.
Hey, mahalo, and I look forward to more of this.
Yeah. See you soon.
Aloha.
Bye. Okay, Joe.
I actually would love if Kyle went first.
Oh, Kyle. Okay, then Kyle.
Oh boy. Okay. I thought I had time to prepare. Yeah, so I really like this question a lot because I think I struggled with that a lot. Especially growing up. As a kid, I guess I really didn't divide the world up gender-wise as much. I guess I had this sort of habit from an early age of like just kind of holding men and women to the same standard, I guess. And probably getting into like high school years and stuff, sort of having to confront this idea that there are expectations of me based on my gender identity, and maybe of women too, and sort of reconciling that, I guess for me was maybe a little challenging. And just being asked to do the symposium really got me thinking about it, because I think what ended up happening for me is that I sort of got comfortable not doing that again. I don't know, or sort of like stepping out of the habit maybe of categorizing everything as masculine and feminine, just because we're not always talking about the same thing. And I think it ends up having different meanings for different people. But I guess maybe to answer the question more directly, there's probably two uses for it that I can think of. One is maybe questionable or tricky, because I think one of the main roles that it has is imposing a set of rules on people throughout society. I think that cultures have done it, have created ideas around what masculine, what men should do, how they should behave, how they should act. and others for women, that is kind of a means of controlling behavior, which isn't always a bad thing. Obviously, there are some natural impulses that need to be curbed and restrained, I think, for everyone. But maybe moving into how it is maybe useful for some people is that, you know, people are meaning making machines. That's what we do. We make meaning out of things. And I think Gemini Brett was hitting on this. I think Matthew's hitting on this as well. Is well, let me take it back. I think one of the one, maybe two sort of visions I ever had when I was meditating was this sense of being one, and what maybe one felt like before there was anything, which is just incredibly lonely. I guess it's like to be whole, you know, say like pre Big Bang universe was just one thing, and to become to even be able to recognize itself, it has to become another thing. So there has to become two for there to even be a one, in a sense. So there being sort of these archetypal foils that we have to sort of tell the story, maybe our experience, has some value, I think, for people. I just maybe don't, I have a harder time defining exactly like what we choose to categorize as masculine and what we choose to categorize as feminine. And obviously as people, I haven't met anyone who's, you know, fits the archetype of either. Like these aren't like real things that we see in the world. They're archetypes, they're ideas and concepts. So maybe just to wrap up, I maybe recently sort of recognized in myself that like I do maybe sort of have some of that. There is some maybe value for me in identifying as male, or in my whatever we call masculinity, which I couldn't name, but I can maybe experience. I was like using my punching bag, which I like to do. It's good exercise, blows off steam. And afterwards I felt this, like, I noticed like my posture was high up, and like I caught myself thinking the idea like, oh, I feel manly right now, which I don't even know what that means, but obviously it has some value to me. And yeah, I guess beyond that, it's, I think, for each person ultimately to decide, you know, what the value is for them. But I guess in practice for me, I don't always find it incredibly useful, but they exist, and it's like they exist in the consciousness of other people. So maybe to ignore the idea of masculine and feminine would be sort of to ignore part of the social reality. So we sort of have to live with it, regardless of your feelings about it to some degree.
That's beautiful.
This is what a lot of
Thank
your talk is about too.
Martha,
Yeah.
Can I add one thing in reflection to that before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, it was so beautiful. I mean, I love also the reason of, to be able to speak with people. You know what I mean? That's sometimes it's just really nice to be able to, whether we're coming from the same place or not, to have a language that with words where we can speak with one another and share. So I love that reason. A reason that I forgot that you really clearly brought back was one of the reasons to divide a one thing into two is because inherently there's three. And the third thing is the relationship between the two. And, you know, regardless of the energy, really that thing's called love. And it's so close to the one, or respect or interest or wonder or even spite, you know, like the one thing that the third thing that's formed between the two, it's like the one, but really interesting, really intriguing, and very, I think, different. And if you try different words than feminine and masculine, there's a different third thing that's born. So I think it's also really important for us to play with polarity in many voices.
Awesome. Yeah, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of your talks are on the day of the symposium called The Wholeness of Gender. So this is a really, really big part of all of what we're here to talk about. Joe, do you feel ready?
Sort of.
Okay.
I feel weird about this question. I really want to answer it, but it feels very strange for me. So I'm largely speaking about this from the perspective of a person who identifies as non-binary. So there's definitely that. But I think that getting rid of gender altogether does not serve a real purpose, in my view, at least, because I think that in real life, in tangible, concrete life, things are either a thing or another. It's like inherent to being in a physical, tangible, and real world. And within those two binaries, there's all these shades in between. But at the end of the day, and this is the thing that I talked in my talk, at the end of the day, we still need language to describe what is the extreme of this and the extreme of that. No one will ever be able to fit one or the other, but recognizing that those two do exist, it's almost recognizing life and how life works and how life creates. And yes, there is an all-encompassing larger oneness that we are all part of and we all can momentarily tap into. But I think that the momentary piece of it is very important, because if we have embodied into life to experience polarity or to experience duality, to get rid of that experience, I find that is counterintuitive to the mission that we might know that we're going under, or we might not. But if the mission is simply to create, and if that's how God or source or oneness creates, I think that we have to kind of meet it in its own terms. And this is like my whole argument with the astrology of malefics and benefics and good and bad and the day and the night. I think that sometimes being within those dualities, it feels very uncomfortable. So or I guess our impetus is to make everything one and to really consolidate everything. But I think once we can get comfortable with the reality that extremes do exist, I think that's when we really get to see oneness, because oneness encompasses those two extremes as well. So I think, to answer the question, I think the importance of identifying or to severing those two sides of yourself or of the world or whatever that may be is that you actually get to see the process that oneness goes through to actually make everything happen, because you're only here because there was a polarity, whether we call it masculine or feminine or diurnal, nocturnal, or positive or negative, or whatever that may be. It's that polarity that actually brought everything into life. So I think it's really important to recognize it and even be thankful for it. That's my view.
Beautiful. So to kind of wrap up, I think what I want to do, if you guys are comfortable, is Cameron, sorry. yes. And I'm just gonna say I have a little bit of wiggle room here because our next thing doesn't start until 2 p.m. PST. So I'm gonna let this is like hot topic. We need like a whole 3 days on just this. But okay.
Could we just also, I don't want to jump in front of Cameron, I'm so sorry. But before I forget, I know where a couple of you are located. Could we, at some point before the call is over, just kind of put contact info in the chat? But also, like, where are people located? I know a couple of us are in the Bay Area. Gemini, Ari, I know you are as well. But it would be great to just be able to connect with one another virtually or even in person. I'm just soaking all of this in and honoring each of you and the perspectives that you're bringing. This is
Absolutely.
just so nourishing.
Yeah, and this is obviously not the end. Like, we will, many of us have already been, you included, Matthew, have been talking about continuing things beyond today.
I'd love that. Yeah,
for sure. So, and lots of people attending want that in various ways. So this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Awesome.
Yeah, but definitely put put your contact information in the chat to share with anybody you want to share with. Go for it. Cameron, I want to hear what you want to say.
Cool, yeah. I think that it's beneficial just to differentiate things is the first answer. Because I feel like when people want to not differentiate things, it's like, well, are you doing that with the whole reality itself? Because if you're not doing that with the whole reality itself, to me, I project, and I'm on the projection, that you're starting from a point of how we've been conditioned in distortions. Because would you get rid of day and night? Would you get rid of past and future? Because no matter what happened in the past, you're projecting it onto your future. So they're one thing, the present moment, the truth of now. But people still use all these other things. And so a lot of times the people that I talk to, I'm like, if at minimum, can we start to see it potentially from just observing nature rather than the distortions that have been handed down to us? Because if we continue to define things off distortions, what we create as a reflex is a distortion, or it will still have distortions within it. Because if I create from a place of feeling upset about something, what am I creating? You know? And so like, I think it has benefit for that, but I also think it just like actually had like benefit from like my partner. If she's pregnant, I might need to like make sure I define certain roles as me being the masculine and her being the feminine. You know, it's just certain like dispositions that people have or have had, especially when maybe we couldn't sit and philosophize about things all the time. We actually had to be in like actual factual reality. And so roles did have to be made in those conditions. And that's very beneficial in situations like that, you know? And so I say that's two lenses that I see through. And I'm a person who's made from many perspectives. So that's only two perspectives, but that's where I'll stop for now.
And your talk is about this too. You're on that wholeness of gender day too. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. Really invite people to go tune into that because yeah, like Gemini bro saying, you know, even just thinking about negative and like it's very simple for us to because we all do correspondence. If you practice astrology or care about astrology at all, you do correspondence. So, you know, for the negative, it's like it's bringing something in. And so when someone has a uterus, they're bringing in life into the reality. You know, just the anatomical penis, it's up and out. It's electric, it's energy, it's shooting out. It's like, that's very simple. And if we could center ourselves and knowing like, oh, that makes sense. And then just getting rid of all the other bullshit that we've been conditioned to think about, then we can start to like really be more centered in ourselves and like be humans with each other, right? And that's the thing that they're saying, like a divine person, like being in connection with each other first, and then allowing labels to do whatever they want to and play. But first is about the connection and the truth of like what's actually happening in this experience. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Martha, can I offer a thought on this?
Go for it, please.
Several pieces elicited in this reflection. You know, my first thought is, no, it's obviously not necessary to, nothing's necessary, right? This is all language. What arose, and I forgot, I think it was something Joe was saying, you know, you look at the relationship between Pisces and Gemini. We have the oneness. Before we classify it, think about it, philosophize on it, like we just have what is, right? I'm going to talk to a group of 10 people about any topic. Each of these 10 people on their own soul journey, on their own path of remembering their own evolutionary needs, will naturally perceive every facet of life in a very particular way. The perspective, the curiosity, the interest, the draw for learning more, the questions that will arise in each person will be very specific to that soul journey. I am certain if I talk to any person about anything, I will hear something and have a thought that I didn't think. And that's what's going to happen here. And you look at any facet of life, we can actually categorize and think about and see another perspective on anything because of the fact that we are all finding our own relationship to life, to our existence here in whatever way serves our ongoing growth. And the fact that we're each growing and we are each on our own path means that we're each going to hold a perspective that only we can hold. So even the question itself, I can be like, well, I don't even think we're divine people. We're not people. These are words that classify, and you know, the thought arose like ideas aren't real. And even that's just an idea. And I think it comes back down to it is not, we are not to get caught or stuck in this super relativistic dialogue of trying to determine the right way or what's true, because we can just appreciate there are so many perspectives and angles that are logically cohesive for each one of us, and to have an open-mindedness and a compassion and an appreciation. But that Pisces Gemini square says we're not going to arrive at the wholeness through the mind. That's the square. We're always going to be stressed to open up and grasp more perspective, see more of the picture, but the mind, the logical constructs, the languaging won't ever get us there entirely. And thus we can appreciate, okay, this is just for communication's sake. It helps us learn. It's useful for our conversation, for learning, for all the different reasons that it's great to be together. And if we can hold it with appreciation in that way, we can thus appreciate different perspectives, different angles, different ways of thinking and categorizing life, and simultaneously honor it's not gonna take us all the way there. It's just a really wonderful way of expansion and growing and learning. But you know, Pisces is Pisces, and you just can't go there with an eye. So those are some thoughts that arose here.
That's awesome. Erik and Cayelin, you're the two who haven't had a chance. Is there something needing to come out?
I'm just going to say one quick thing. I put it in the chat, but what a lot of this reminds me of is that saying, it's not either or, it's both and more. And I just love how everybody has spoken to that in a way, and that we're all facets of the diamond. The diamond is one thing, but we all have different perspectives, and we do need language to talk about it. So I just want to say, yeah, I totally agree with all that.
Thank you, Erik.
Yeah, nothing really else to add other than I love the discussion that's going on, and I'm also very aware of the time. So this is a bigger topic for much later, but I appreciate all of the perspectives here. It's really healthy and feels good to open this up.
Awesome. Yeah, and there will be more, definitely. And people watching, listening at any point, please message me or any of us and say what you think is what's needed next in the world. Like that was going to be my next question to this panel, but we don't have time for it. But it's really, my question is, okay, so now what? And I would love to hear people's answers in whatever form you want to give it to me or to any of us. But just to close, could we drop again back into silence, and each of you, I'll call your names again, and each of you close with a word or two, or a very mini little prayer, something you want to like kind of seal in any of this and send healing and blessing into the world with this conversation. That's okay. So I'm just gonna take 10 seconds to come inside. So I'm going to go around the circle the other way this time and start with Ari.
All right, well then I'll share a little chant.
Awesome.
Awaken voice, awaken choice, sing with heart, sing with melody. Awaken voice, awaken choice, sing with heart, sing with melody. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da.
Gemini.
We can learn so many things through shadow work. I mean, not only psychologically, I mean, getting outside and allowing yourself to give the back of your heart to the light and watching your shadow. It's solstice, so somewhere for many of us, the sun is at its height, the height of the light, and feels like a really resonant time to come together and speak about these things. And very importantly, for the other half of the earth, it's the longest shadow today because the sun is at its depths. So maybe we find balance in all ways in this study of light and shadow that is available to those who have had the courage to incarnate and gaze with the living sky through human eyes.
Thank you. Cayelin.
Magic and miracles through the superconductive power of love.
Beautiful. Cameron.
I would say rebecoming the one. I've been thinking a lot about it just throughout this whole symposium. And so there's a lot of contexts that are needed for us to even orient towards that. Because there always has to be a context for the content. And so what I always would invite everybody to do is just rebecome the one between what is perceived as your mind and your body. If we could start there, I think a lot of things will start to resolve themselves inherently. So that's what I would lead with.
Thank you. Erik.
Being vulnerable is a really authentic expression of the masculine, and being able to really get in touch with one's feelings and not ignore them or try to override them is would change the world. Thanks.
Thank you. Kyle.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything super pithy, but I think maybe this is the whole idea of becoming the one, or even just taking a look at what maybe masculinity means to you, is to give yourself permission to exist outside of that paradigm, outside of that archetype, like without judgment. Maybe like a lot of issues arise when we're judging ourselves based on the standard of the archetype. And I think give yourself room to be.
Thank you. Matthew.
May we collectively transition from fragmentation into wholeness. Ashe.
Can you say that one more time? I want to hear that word, that sentence.
May we transition from may we collectively transition from fragmentation to wholeness. Ashe. And so it is.
Thank you. Joe.
I pray that we can all make Hermes or Mercury our friend, but never take them too seriously.
I love it. That is like an awesome way to end this entire conversation. That's so perfect. Yeah, and I will just add in beauty and love and gratitude. You're each such beautiful humans, and I'm so grateful that you were here. So grateful that you're willing to have this conversation. Some of you overcame some courage. You rose with courage. And I really, really, really appreciate it. And more to come. And to anyone watching, please sign on again with the next link for the panel that starts at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is going to be on the wholeness of gender, and involves another group of amazing humans. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. See you guys soon. Thanks, Matthew. We'll be in touch. Bye.